That was something that the Patriots just needed. This was not a very good wide receiver room.
Where Stephon Diggs has agreed to a 3-year, $69 million contract with the Patriots. Former All-Pro wideout spent last season with the Texans, suffering a season-ending torn ACL in late October.
I think after this latest move, the New England Patriots may be my dark horse favorite for having the best offseason out of every team in the NFL, at least on paper. And while you do play the games for a reason, there's a chance that some of these moves just don't pan out. I always say that if your front office is making moves that you could get behind, or at least is making moves that make sense to get the fan base excited, that's enough to guarantee yourself a win in the offseason. So before we get to the content, if you're a baseball fan, we just dropped a banger on our brand new baseball channel, Uni Diamond Talk. It's on Yasiel Puig's crazy story, and we're giving away 10 copies of MLB The Show 25 to a subscriber that turns on their notifications on that channel. Now that we get all that out of the way, mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? I'll admit my takes are not always correct. I am on record saying multiple times that I felt like the New England Patriots should have stood pat with Mac Jones and traded back from the number 3 overall pick to get multiple first-round picks from either the Minnesota Vikings or the New York Giants. But instead, the New England Patriots stood pat and selected Drake May at the number 3 pick. I criticized them for this decision primarily because I felt like going to the New England Patriots was a losing situation. They had no offensive weapons. I mean, they had the worst wide receiver core in the NFL the year prior. They had no offensive line, a rookie head coach. I wasn't very optimistic in their offensive coordinator either, and I felt like there was no QB in the NFL that could succeed in that situation. But I think their season last year was the best possible scenario that could have happened. Firstly, they didn't thrust Drake May into the starting position right away. They took their time with him. And after a month of Jacoby Brissett playing under center, they decided to allow Drake May to play. I would have never anticipated Drake May turning in a Pro Bowl season. Drake May completed 67% of his passes, threw for 15 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Sure, that did not translate to actual success in the win-loss column, but New England Patriots fans were very optimistic because they certainly have their answer at the quarterback position moving forward. And he proved it early on, and he's still on a rookie scale contract. And on top of that, the New England Patriots had the most cap space in the NFL entering this offseason and the number 4 overall pick in the NFL draft. But they had a lot of issues. There's no question about it. They had a hole at each and every single position except quarterback, defensive back, and that goes all the way to their head coach. So immediately they got to work. They told Gerard Mayo that he was out immediately after his final game, after praising him the year prior, and they brought in the perfect candidate to be the head coach moving forward. A New England Patriots legend, a fan favorite, and an individual that has a proven track record as a leader of men, and a guy that has proven to us that he can get the job done if you give him the right pieces. I mean, Mike Vrabel was able to resurrect Ryan Tannehill's career, and he was doing a great job until the Tennessee Titans decided to trade away A.J. Brown for the pick that would become Treylon Burks. And immediately after that trade, Mike Vrabel didn't make it back to the playoffs ever again. It's hires like this that have the ability to reset an entire franchise's culture. But they didn't stop there. They were one of the most aggressive teams in the offseason. And rightfully so, because there was holes in every single part of this team. They signed Wes Schweitzer, a guard that didn't necessarily put together the best season the year prior with the New York Jets. But they also brought in Marcus Epps, a safety that's very solid against the run and incredible if you decide to blitz him. Problem is he's one of the worst coverage safeties in the entire NFL. But they made some savvy acquisitions. K'Lavon Chaisson, for instance, an edge rusher that ranked in the top 30 in rushing the quarterback before signing Garrett Bradbury once the Minnesota Vikings let him go. Bradbury isn't necessarily known for his ability as a pass blocker, but he's a very solid run blocking center. And at the very minimum, in the meantime, is a great stopgap for the New England Patriots that have a very thin offensive line. They then stole another one of the New York Jets offensive linemen in Morgan Moses, who's another solid offensive tackle, and then stole Robert Spillane from the Las Vegas Raiders, who was top 10 against the run last year for the Las Vegas Raiders as their linebacker, and is a very solid pass rusher as well, before bringing in Harold Landry, who does play on the edge, but also specializes in run defense, before signing their biggest player in the offseason, a player that was considered to be the best player in all of free agency, Milton Williams, a defensive tackle who was graded as the second best pass rusher in the NFL last year for the Philadelphia Eagles. Williams had 6 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and generated 40 pressures last year. But New England Patriots fans were wondering what the strategy was offensively. Who was Drake May going to throw the football to? And the Patriots officially answered that question on Tuesday night. Just a few moments after Russell Wilson shocked the NFL world and announced that he was signing with the New York Giants, the New England Patriots announced that they were signing Stefon Diggs to a 3-year, $69 million contract, which includes $26 million guaranteed. Now, if you're a New England Patriots fan or a fan of the NFL in general, you would think that this isn't a big deal, primarily because Stefon Diggs tore his ACL with the Houston Texans this past year, and even prior to that, he didn't really look like himself during the latter part of his career with the Buffalo Bills. A lot of fans were even speculating that Stefon Diggs was going to return to the Buffalo Bills. But in 8 games with the Houston Texans this past year, Stefon Diggs had 496 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns, all while establishing chemistry with a brand new team. Diggs showed that he was capable of being the wide receiver 1 for a team again. I mean, in week 3, he was targeted 12 times and got 10 receptions for 94 receiving yards against one of the best defenses in the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings. He was actually performing really well for the Houston Texans before he tore his ACL. There is obviously a question of how good he's going to be coming off of a torn ACL, but this isn't that risky of a contract. It's $23 million a year for one of the best wide receivers in the NFL and a target that Drake May can trust moving forward. But here's what's so significant about this deal. That number 4 overall pick in the NFL draft now opens up to a variety of options, and the options should really excite Patriots fans. The NFL draft this year is very enigmatic. I mean, it could go in a variety of ways, and unfortunately for the Patriots, in terms of getting the top players in the draft, it might not be the most favorable position. You see, the number 1 overall pick's presumed to be Cam Ward. Then if the Cleveland Browns don't trade out of number 2, it's supposed to be Abdul Carter. And then following that, the number 3 overall pick, what we're assuming is that the New York Giants will take Shedeur Sanders. And we have a completely separate video on that. We talked about it in our Russell Wilson video and the video we uploaded before that. But the Patriots are in a very sweet situation. Let's say the Cleveland Browns do decide to trade back. Some team wants to leapfrog the New York Giants and select Shedeur Sanders, which puts the New York Giants in a tough spot because they really wanted a quarterback originally, but they didn't really trust whether or not they would be able to get Shedeur Sanders at number 3, and they didn't want to give up additional draft capital to move up to the number 2 pick, so they opt to sign Russell Wilson on a 1-year deal just in case. Well, if that was to happen, the smart money would be on the New York Giants potentially taking Travis Hunter, who is graded as the best overall prospect in the draft, or it's Abdul Carter. It really depends on whose big board you're going based off of. So there are multiple scenarios at play here. I mean, the Patriots now have multiple options. If the Browns do stay pat and select Abdul Carter at the number 2 pick, I'm assuming the Giants would then select Shedeur Sanders at number 3, which means Travis Hunter would fall to the New England Patriots at number 4 overall. This is extremely exciting if you think about it from the perspective of a Patriots fan, because this means you're going to have Milton Williams on the interior with Harold Landry, K'Lavon Chaisson, and Robert Spillane as your linebackers, and then you have Christian Gonzalez with Travis Hunter as your DBs. Probably the least exciting scenario here is a scenario that could also happen, and that's the Cleveland Browns select Abdul Carter with the number 2 pick, and the New York Giants select Travis Hunter with the number 3 pick, which means at that point the New England Patriots will have to select Will Campbell number 4 overall, who isn't a bad prospect. It's just he isn't a generational offensive tackle, but it's still a good investment in making sure Drake May is consistently protected. At the very worst case, Will Campbell turns into an elite left guard. It's not necessarily the greatest offensive tackle draft, and you could also trade back and maybe select an edge rusher or select Armand Membo from Missouri. Regardless, I feel like the New England Patriots plan for this offseason was just incredible. Teams don't turn around their fortunes this much in one offseason. You don't go from depleted to a team that could potentially coach their way into a wild card spot in one season. And what's even cooler about this is the fact that Stefon Diggs chose a team that was his former team's division rival, which means if he's fully healthy, he's going to go up against the Buffalo Bills twice next year, which should just make for some great television, because Stefon Diggs did play against Buffalo last year and he had 6 receptions for 82 yards. I mean, he just loves to feast against his former teams. I mean, they did lose against the Minnesota Vikings Vikings, but again, 10 receptions for 94 yards is incredible. It's a great bag for Stephon Diggs, who's still just 31 years old and probably the final big payday of his career. It's not too much of a risk for the New England Patriots, and all in all, the Patriots have had probably the greatest turnaround in one offseason that I've seen since last year with the Washington Commanders. I'm not saying that the Patriots are going to make it to the Super Bowl, but there's a lot of hope for optimism as a result of this move. So let me know in the comment section down below if you're a fan of the New England Patriots. What do you think about the signing of Stephon Diggs? Aside from that, I don't know if you've heard, Russell Wilson just signed with the New York Giants. We have a completely separate video on that, and I'm going to leave it in the end screen to meet you guys there. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.